Right, one and all, welcome to the Ultimate Hockey Show here on Game Time TV. We're joined by Red Petty. Good evening, Rich. How are you?
Very good, Michael. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm okay. The computer decided to do an update 2 minutes before we decided to go to air. So I mean, happens when I'm broadcasting. Happens when I do this show. You know, it's always the old saying, right? Take a break, or the machine will take the most inconvenient of times, as I've learned.
Mhm.
And I got hit with that. So apologies for being late. Welcome to the Ultimate Hockey Show. Michael Gill joined by Rick Petty. I've already seen some comments from Rob in the chat, which we'll get to in a minute. He just dives right in head first. Has left us his pits already. We'll get to that probably at the end of the show. We'll recap the second round. We'll give you an update on the Jets coaching search. One
And the
coaching search
Leafs
has
coaching
already,
search, and the Leafs coaching search, which
yeah,
is now
yes, yes. If we heard from Craig Berube today, um, I took that as changes are coming to the Toronto Maple Leafs in the way the Leafs play. We'll get to that in just a minute. If I may start in Toronto, I am not feeling very comfortable with my situation right now. But we'll get to that in a minute. I think the goaltending could say the same. Um, but let's recap the second round of the playoffs. I'm not sure. I don't believe this series was over the last time we talked. But the New York Rangers dispatched of the Carolina Hurricanes in six. Um, New York winning seven straight playoff games, including taking a 3-0 series lead. Hurricanes winning games 4 and 5 and looking like they were going to win game six until three goals in the last 9 minutes of regulation helped them overcome a deficit to win the series in six in Carolina on road ice, they like to call it. So the Rangers through to the conference final. Rich, do you have a thought, opinion, a comment, a suggestion on this series?
yes, no. It was a good. So was it not a good series? Did you like it?
It was. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, two of the first three games went to overtime, which went the way of the Rangers. Usually you see those split, but the bounces end up going the way they go, and you work
Yep.
for your bounces. I think the Rangers were the better team through and through in the series. I don't think there's much debate about it, but yeah, Carolina just started slow and dug themselves too deep of a hole to climb out of.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, well, we each predicted the Rangers in 7 games. The Rangers won in six, but like you say, those 2 games, if either one of those games or even both of them had been won by Carolina, the series could have easily gone 7 games. Like it could have easily gone, like it was that close. A goal here, a goal there. Like it's not like I can't remember all the scores in the game. Maybe there was one game where there was a huge. I think there was one game where New York won big, but for the most part, those were close games. And Carolina's a good team. Like they're knocked out in the second round. If you're a Carolina fan, you know, oh, knocked out in the second round again. Listen, New York Rangers are, they won the President's Trophy. They're one of the best teams in the league. You could argue they are the best team in the league until somebody knocks them off for that pedestal. And like, what are you going to say? I mean, New York Rangers are a good hockey team. All the teams that are remaining now, New York, Florida, Dallas, and Edmonton, they're all good hockey teams, very good hockey teams. 3 of them play a certain style. One of them plays a little bit differently, but they're all very good hockey teams. And again, like I said in the last round, these 4 teams being in the semifinals, I'm not surprised. I'm not saying, oh, that kind of shocks me. Um, I could have seen this happening. I could have predicted it. I made some other predictions, not exactly the same way, but yeah, actually, and it's worth noting, I should say this, both you and I know we're going to go through this, but both you and I
Yeah,
correctly predicted all 4 winners in the second round. I don't think in all the years that we have done a radio show together
correct.
that you and I both have picked one round all the winners.
Never
Like,
mind.
not,
Never mind together.
yeah, exactly. And I'm not counting like the finals. Well, that's just one series, right? But in
Right.
either the first round, second round, or third round, even, I don't think we've ever, you and I together, have picked all the winners bang on like we did this year. And there you go. So something
I don't
interesting.
know if
But
that's
anyway,
an indictment on the NHL or what, but
no, it's not an indictment. It's that we know what we're talking about. Once in a while, a blind squirrel finds a nut. Once in a while, a dog with no sense of smell finds a bone. So there you go. So it's
right.
twice
Um,
a day, twice a day, a clock is right. Even a clock that is completely broken is right twice a day. Think about
yep.
that. So
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely fair. My
anyway,
my big question for you is where does Carolina go from here? I was gonna say, oh, they need a contract extension for their coach, and then that happened in the last 2 days. Um,
great signing. Rod Brindamore is a great coach. If he listen, he's a Carolina guy. He's been there almost his whole career. He played like the end of his career. He played there. He's been in that team and part of that organization. If he would ever not coach anymore, they'll find a place for him in like player personnel or assistant to the GM, or maybe becomes GM, or maybe becomes assistant to president of hockey operations. It's like he will always be in that organization. For them, if they did not sign him to an extension, I don't know how many teams need a coach, but every other team right now that's looking for a head coach would have Rod Brindamore at or near the top of their list. So Carolina did a very smart thing, and they signed him to an extension and got him on the dotted line. Because this is not what happened this year is not it's not Carolina at fault. They were up against a real juggernaut in New York, and for me, Carolina, like, well, what do you think they need? I think their goaltending was pretty good. I think their defensive play is pretty good. They got a lot of toughness. I think they just struggled at times to score enough relative to New York. And New York just has a little bit more firepower, just a little bit more talent on the front end. So what does Carolina do to address that? Maybe you got to
well,
find more
here's
guys who
the thing, and kind of where the context of my conversation was going.
okay.
They have a lot of UFAs and RFAs that'll need attention. Can't keep them all. Plus, you got some prospects that you probably didn't want to promote within. So, change is inevitable in Carolina, just like it is everywhere else.
Yeah, I would agree.
But I think the one thing we can say about Carolina, just before we talk about the Rangers, is if you want to talk about a model of consistency and a perennial team to win the Stanley Cup year after year after year to at the very least have a chance,
Yeah,
that would be Carolina for me.
I would agree. I would agree. They're always there. Any hockey pundit, anybody who knows anything about anything on TSN or Sports Center or Sportsnet,
Yeah.
they all say Carolina, what a good team. They're gonna be one of the top teams in the East, one of the top teams in the NHL, and they have been the last 5 years. So I agree with you. They're not far off. Like I could see them, depending upon what they do in terms of signing UFAs and RFAs and what they decide to do. They're going to be right back at it again the next year. And without
Yeah, and now that they are probably the most important person signed to that,
yeah,
but maybe isn't their general manager or their president of hockey ops, it's their head coach. They're pretty well set regardless.
mm-hmm.
So now we talked about Florida and we talked about Boston. What do you think about the mean and nastiness that happened in this series?
was nice. Did you not like it? I liked it. It was a good series. It was lots of like the whistle blows and then a glove in the face and a guy gets pulled away from the goalie and then a whistle goes and a guy skates in and gives the goalie a little snow shower if he's down low against the ice. Like it just all right at the edge. And did you hear what the Marchand said before? I think it was before game 6 where he'd been out for a couple of games and then he played game 6, although he wasn't great in it.
Well,
I mean, he
yeah.
said, he said, to quote, and I'm paraphrasing, listen, hey, how I got hit there. Yeah. Was it a dirty play? Maybe, but that's the playoffs. And you know what? Nobody's going to say it out loud, but this is the way it is. You're trying to hurt people on the other team. You're not trying to injure them. You're not trying to kill their career, but you want to bruise them. You want to hurt them. You want to make them sore. You want to knock them out of the game maybe for a period or two. You want to, he says, that's the game.
Yeah.
And he says, people may not like hearing it, but that's the way we all play. Not everybody's going to say it, but Marchand has the guts to say it. And he's right. You got to hate the other
100% right.
I remember, you know what? See that now it's a little bit too, because now with the NHLPA, it's gotten a little bit cozier between teams and there's more player movement between teams, right? Like back 50 years ago, if you got drafted by the Red Wings or you got drafted by the Bruins or you got drafted by the Rangers, for the most part, you stayed with a team for most, if not all of your career. And then that happened right into the late 80s and early 90s when the salary cap came into play, and then free agency and UFAs after a certain amount of years and so on. And that kind of changed everything. But in general, going back, there were hate-ons for other teams. There were hate-ons. You played against the guy in another team for 10, 12 years in your own division, and you hated that guy. And you couldn't stand him. You wouldn't. And I remember Howie Meeker, he played for the Leafs back in the, 40s. And he says, you didn't talk to guys. You didn't go fishing with guys that you played against on another team. You couldn't stand them. You didn't want to talk to them. And he says, even when that guy got traded to your team, it took a while for you to warm up to him because for 5 years you'd been jabbing him and poking him and sticking him and everything else. Now suddenly you're supposed to be his teammate. He says, and that's, to me, that's human nature. That's hockey. That's human nature. This, we go hard. And then when the whistle blows, then it's all cozy, and we can all be sing Kumbaya and hold hands by the fire. That's not hockey. Not the hockey I know. When I played, I didn't like guys on other teams. It wasn't all cozy and all this wonderful.
Do you think it's not like that anymore because we're at 32 teams and you don't see guys that often anymore?
Oh, I think it's for a number of reasons. I think it's, there's more teams. I think there's so much free agency, guys moving around so much that inevitably you're probably the odds are if you're in the league right now, there's a pretty good chance you're going to play with one of the 3 guys that are in the league come the end of your career. By the end of your career, you'll have moved around enough for a lot of guys. Either they moved or you moved onto their team or somebody moved onto your team. So there's lots of churn. And so it's not this thing where you got the same 20 guys hating the other 20 guys on another team for 5, 10, 15 years in a row. It's not like that anymore. So you've got to adapt. And then there's also the World Championships and there's Olympic hockey and there's all these things that never used to be other than, the Canada Cup. And then when there was the Russia Canada series back in the early 70s, that was the first time.
72.
But before that, actually what's interesting, before that, there was almost no playing with guys from other teams except at the All-Star game. And that was even tough to do, guys. I couldn't stand playing the All-Star game because this is a guy that I'm going at it for 40 games. And now you put me in the same room with them. I'm supposed to put on the same jersey and play hard with him. I get it. It's human nature, right? You gotta have a little bit of a hate on. So that's playoff hockey. I get what Marchand is saying. And to answer your original question, I know this has been a long thing, but I liked it. I like playoff hockey when it's a little bit edgy and I don't like violence. I don't like stick working guys, whacking guys in the face. That's crap. Sorry. That's not good. But fighting, I don't mind fighting. I don't mind pushing in front of the net and bear hugging and knocking guys over. I think that's all part of it. How about you? Would you not like that part of it?
To me, it was To me, it was a series about why both teams, particularly in that division, are at the top of the division. They were fighting first place. Um, multiple games into the season, late in the season. Um, Boston was in first place. Florida passed them last minute.
Yeah.
Um, to me, it's just two teams that play the same way. And the Bruins finally met somebody that I think plays their game.
Yeah.
And when you have two teams that play similar styles of games, at least physicality, stuff is going to happen. And yeah, the Bruins may be lucky to win those couple games there, close, but
Yeah.
2-1 in the playoffs is still a loss, right? I mean,
Yep.
that's you could say, oh, we got swept, but 2-1, 3-2, 2-1, 4-3. Well, all of those are losses when it comes to the playoffs. And they don't ask, game within the game or that bounce, right? It's
Yeah.
fact of the
No.
fact of the matter is, you lost 4 games and the other team won 4 games, and you win the
Exactly.
series.
I would agree. And probably to your point, I know, like you said, with the Rangers and Carolina, the Rangers won a pair of overtime games, and Florida won 4-2 against the Bruins. And, the Bruins won a couple of games and could have potentially won more, but a bad bounce here or there. But like you say, that's, I would say, the law of averages, whatever you want to call it. Like, it eventually works out. Like, you can't fluke your way to winning a 7-game series. You can fluke a game. Your goalie could steal a game here or there, but I don't know. Like, to me, the Rangers deserve to win over Carolina. Like, it's not like the
Yep.
Rangers won 4-2 in games and they fluked out 3 of the 4 games, or it was all a lucky bounce here and there, and Shesterkin played out of his mind, and otherwise Carolina would have hammered him. I don't think so. The Rangers were the better team over 6 games, and I think it's the same thing for Florida. Not by a lot, excuse me, because the Bruins, like you said, they're right there. Same with Carolina. They're right there. Lose a game here or there at overtime by 1 goal, lost some other games by 1 goal. So saying they're tight series, but I would argue Florida was the better team over the course of the 6 games. They had a little bit more scoring, a little bit more offensive push. I think the Bruins at the end, that if it wasn't for Pasternak and Marchand, they just weren't able to generate a lot of offense, and they weren't able to score a lot of goals. And it's just hard. It's just hard to to score if if you only have one line going, or if you only have one superstar that's playing well, because the other team can just key on him, right? And then it dries everything up.
So that is the eastern side of the picture. Let's quickly move to the west and let's talk about Colorado taking on Dallas.
Yeah.
Rich, I think you said, it's going to be hard, if not impossible, for, Colorado to score 5 goals a game like they did against the Jets against Colorado, and you were right
And
about
and aha. Yeah.
um,
Which says
how,
which says
how did you
probably
see this series?
no, but it says probably as much about the problems with the Jets and the construction of their team as it
Right.
says about the wonders of the Dallas Stars and their construction as not just a pretty good league or regular season team, but as a playoff team. Dallas is a team that's built to win in the playoffs, and they proved it
Um,
against the Avalanche. Now, Colorado had some challenges, and you can maybe
yeah,
introduce that.
and it's interesting because all of a sudden depth scoring evaporated for Colorado. McKinnon wasn't as impactful. The power play wasn't as impactful. Georgiev kind of slipped a level, whether you like to admit it or not. Um, Dallas's depth at the end of the day outshone Colorado's over the course of 6 games or 5 games, whatever it was.
6
Uh,
games.
6 games and then overtime, double overtime in game 6. Probably went about an hour longer than it should have based on what happened in the first overtime. But At the end of the day, the right
It was
team won.
interference. It was goaltender interference, 100%. It
You
should have
think
been a
so?
penalty. It should have been a penalty because he went in. He wasn't shoved in. He skated into him. Now they said it was incidental contact, so they didn't call a penalty. That's because of probably it's overtime and they don't want to give one team an advantage. They want the teams to decide it and not call a penalty. It has to be really egregious to call a penalty in overtime most times
So
with
so
no.
you think that was goalie interference?
Absolutely, because he skated into him and he was in the blue paint. The goalie was in the blue paint. He skated into the blue paint. He bumped him. Now the other guy, he was right beside him and kind of skated with him, and but he didn't push him. It's not like he rode him into there. The
Right.
skater skated into him, and it was interference. May have been incidental
But
contact. That's the wishy-washy way of saying we don't want to make a call, but it was a call to basically say that's garbage. To me, that's a garbage goal. If that had been allowed, then to me, then all the other interference penalties that have been called all before that have been overturned are garbage because,
true that. Um, so where do
in
so
my mind,
Dallas obviously advances. The unique part is Dallas lost their first two playoff games at home and been on a roll since.
yep.
Uh, doesn't appear to be to me like they're going to be stopped. We'll see.
Yep.
Um, they to me are 12, 6, and 2 deep. We'll put that up against the Canadian winner of the Canadian series, Vancouver and Edmonton. And that's all I have to say is the clock struck midnight on Vancouver. They tried their old following behind, then the fire wagon, trying to do this with less than 20 shots. And it caught up to them. And what I think I saw for Vancouver is what I thought I would see against Nashville, which is why I did not pit Vancouver against Nashville. But they were able to win it. It's interesting because Edmonton, when they were down 3-2, and remember that was JT Miller game-winning goal in Game 5 in the last minute to put them up. It's like Edmonton said, okay, enough is enough. We're going to play team defense, shut them down, and dominate game 6 and 7. And for about 115 out of the 120 minutes, I didn't feel like Vancouver had a chance until that egregious pizza of it was served up in front of the net to Connor Garland yesterday. And they did another goal. And, without the block of the Vancouver defenseman going kind of in front of his own offensive goal to block it, it's probably a tie game. But, like, 5 minutes out of 120, to me, Vancouver, this was more about what Edmonton did versus what Vancouver didn't do. And for some reason, it felt like Vancouver was playing scared. Somebody said on one of the podcasts, that I was listening to either last night after the game or this morning, I can't remember. He said, you can't play scared when you play the Edmonton Oilers. If you sit back and play the Edmonton Oilers, it's going to happen what happened more times than not. And the interesting part is McDavid and Draisaitl only had 1 point yesterday. So now all of a sudden we have this emergence of a number one defenseman in Edmonton to go along with Mattias Ekholm and Evan Bouchard. But, this to me it's interesting because we talked about, Calvin Pitter getting Game 4, Game 5. Now with the season on the line, you back to Stuart Skinner and talked about, a gutsy decision, which winds up paying off. I have a lot more questions about Vancouver than I do about Edmonton, but I think I'm going to have a lot of questions about Edmonton going forward. And I know I just said a mouthful over there, but I don't know if my thoughts, opinions, and suggestions make any sense. But this is another scenario where I think the right team won.
Yeah, I would say that. But like you said, I don't agree with you on the fact that this is more about what Edmonton did than what Vancouver did not do. I don't agree with that. I think there's a number of factors here. I think Vancouver had overall the better quality goaltending. I think Vancouver, and this is something similar to the Jets, is Vancouver has some very talented players, but when you could say even Edmonton, but when you get to the playoffs, talented players, talent alone is not enough because you have less time, less space, less room to maneuver, less time to keep your head up, um, or less time to keep your head down, playing with the puck and doing all these things. And I think Vancouver was exposed when you could argue they lost their second best player. I would say overall, JT Miller has been the best player for them. But right after that is Brock Besser. It's been Miller and Besser that drives that team. And it's shocking
Yep.
because Elias Pettersson, he's your $10 million a year man after starting next season. And like Rick Tocchet said, he's a passenger. He's got a ticket on the deck on the ship, and he's just sitting there drinking a pina colada on the deck in his lawn chair, looking at the waves going by. And everybody else is downstairs in the engine room pulling on the oars, going in the right direction. And Pettersson's not doing anything. Like, to me, but this is the thing, playoff hockey's different. And Pettersson, I think he's small. I think he got scared to get hit. I think he got banged around. I didn't think he had grit. I don't know if he was playing injured. He looked a shadow of what he was this year and what he's been over the last few years. And just like Ehlers, just like Connor, a little bit just like Scheifele, suddenly get into playoff hockey, and these guys that are supposed to be your drivers, your superstars, they're nowhere to be found. And I think with Vancouver, you could say that for Pettersson. You could say that
Their
for
power play disappeared too.
their power. Well, that's Pettersson and that's Mikheyev, and also Quinn Hughes. Quinn Hughes was like, he just would go to the blue line or go to center ice, shoot the puck and shoot the puck. And like, he's not driving the play like Cale Makar does and like Josh Morrissey does and like he did all year long. Quinn Hughes, like he was, I don't know if he got hurt, I don't know if he's scared. Playoff hockey, it's different. He and Pettersson and Mikheyev too were persona non grata, like a whole bunch of little kids on the side of a milk carton. Where are they? Nobody can find them. They're missing. And I just think Edmonton exposed that. And Edmonton, even though Draisaitl and McDavid didn't score enough, their secondary scoring produced, and Vancouver's secondary scoring didn't. And I think then losing Brock Besser going into Game 7, I think Vancouver may not have said it out loud, but I think in their mindset was, we can't score goals without Brock, without Pettersson driving, Mikheyev, Hughes. So we have to play kitty bar the door and hope that we get 0-0 late in the game. Maybe we score in a power play. We win 1-0, 2-1. Maybe we go to overtime and we luck it out there. And I don't think it was what they didn't do. I think not that they're scared, but I think their way to win was, we have to play that way because we can't drive scoring like we've done previously this year and like we've done in earlier parts of the playoffs. And I think that's what it is. And Edmonton exposed it. And I think Vancouver's got a lot of the same questions as the Jets. Is what kind of a team do we have? We have a team that does well in the regular season, and in the playoffs, they're not the same team. And that's the problem, is you could be that team, but you're never going to have success in the playoffs. And that's why teams like Dallas, Carolina, Boston, New York, Florida, the same teams year after year, they draft the same type of players. They play the same type of way. They may not win the President's Trophy. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but they get in the playoffs and they know how to play playoff hockey. Their players have been trained that way. It's been ingratiated into their brain. And it means playing in pain. It means sacrificing for your team. It means blocking shots, even when you're not a shot blocker, all those things. And some teams have those guys and some teams don't. And the teams that have more of those guys do better in the playoffs. And I will let's 4 teams remaining, 3 teams have a majority of those types of players. But anyway.
let's also remember that I think Edmonton was where Vancouver is not that long ago. And it took
Yeah.
them some playoff runs to figure that out.
Well, and Edmonton needed 7 games to beat Vancouver. It's
Yeah.
not like Edmonton won in 4 straight.
Or
I mean,
five.
can you imagine what Vancouver would look like if they had Pettersson and Hughes playing anywhere near how they played all year long as a potential Norris Trophy candidate and a potential MVP like they've been in past years and even this year to a large extent?
I'm not even sure if what you're suggesting to me even gets the series to game 6.
What do you mean?
In Vancouver's favor. I think the Canucks win that series in 6 if those two guys you just mentioned are firing.
It's strange. It's just strange. But anyway, that's my take on it. And I appreciate your take. I just think this is, even though Edmonton won and you give them credit, they were the better team over 7 games. There's no hiding that. There's no trying to downplay that. But to me, it was as much about Vancouver not being who they are and how they were all year as it was Edmonton outperforming Vancouver. But that being said, though, now I have to give kudos. If I had a hat on, I don't have a hat. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this napkin as my hat, and I'm going to tip my hat to you. Is there?
No.
Because in this second round, we both picked the 4 winners: New York, Florida, Dallas, and Edmonton. And I got 1 point for each pick, but I did not get the number of games correct on any of the 4 series. You were.
Can you recap the pitch? Because I was wondering about that.
You were fortunate, you were smart enough to pick 2 of the 4 winners in the correct amount of games. So we each picked the Rangers in 7, which I don't think was a crazy thing to suggest because you and I thought that New York and Carolina
we were 8 minutes away from that happening, despite the series being 3-0.
Correct. There you go. And the Rangers won in 6. So we each got a point there. Florida, Boston. I picked Florida in 7. You picked Florida in 6. Florida won in 6. Could have won in 7. So could the Bruins, maybe. But see, that's the difference. You got 2 points there. I got 1. The Stars and the Avalanche. I picked them in 7. Dallas. You picked Dallas in 6. Dallas won in 6. So you got another 2 points there. 1 for the winning team and 1 for the number of games. And then Edmonton, you and I selected Edmonton to win. Myself in 6 games, you in 5, and Edmonton won in 7. So we each got a point there. So now after the second round, you had 6 points out of a possible 8. That's a very good mark. That's a 75% average. That's a very, you could brag about that on your report card. Very well done. I got a 50%, but I still got all my picks right. And that's the most important thing, is the picks right. The number of games, that's kind of a crapshoot, and you don't know what can happen. So now, after 2 rounds, you are ahead of me 13-11 in terms of points. So I just wanted to give a recap on that. So
interesting. So this might be the year after all for me.
Yeah. So do we want to talk a little bit about things around the league and then come back to the picks at the end, or do you want to do the picks now?
Yeah. No, let's do that quickly here. I have a comment started. I wanted to talk about this since Rob brought it on, but he reminded me this week we were come to learn of the passing of TSN Sports Center anchor Darren Tutishin. Darren fought an illness for a number of years very bravely and was one of the reasons for me growing up that I wanted to be a sportscaster. I used to wanted to do something like Sports Center, but trust me, reading highlights off a teleprompter is a lot harder than it looks. He made it look easy and so entertaining and so energetic. Just wanted to pass on the best to his family. I was certainly shocked when TSN came on the air with that news a couple of days ago. But I had not seen him on SportsCenter for a while. But
he'd been ill for a number of years. He was diagnosed with prostate cancer about 3 years ago, and then he went on a year sabbatical fighting it with all the treatment and sort of things that you can do. Then he came back for a year from roughly November 22 until December 23. And then he signed off right before Christmas last year, December 23, not knowing if he'd come back or anybody knew because he was just not doing well. And now he's passed away. And
Yeah, I unfortunately I missed the part where he left. Isn't that much known about it, or at least for me anyway.
well, they
Nonetheless,
announced it once on the broadcast when he left and when he came back and then when he left again. But they're not going to announce it every
yeah,
sports center, right? I mean,
yeah,
if you're not watching that one, which is his last one, then you would miss him. But
yeah,
I agree with you. He he's. I think we're about 8 months apart, 9 months apart in terms of being born. He's a little bit older than I am, but he's around the same age as me. He's got the same, and he's raised on the prairies just like me. He's got the same kind of quirky sense of humor. He's a little bit more, say, maybe a little bit raunchier than I am. I'm not quite that raunchy, but he's a little bit of a goofball. I can be a little bit of a goofball too. So just when he did Sports Center, I just heard so many people just talk about it. And the one thing that resonated for me, and it's true because you sense that when you watched, is he did every Sports Center like it was the greatest thing in the world. Like, and they said he would come in after doing it weeks and weeks after weeks, and he would just be as excited after doing it, after doing the 500th show that he did, as he was when he did the first show. And he was just like a little kid, and he brought so much enthusiasm and joy and excitement into it. And he made sports highlights funny and fun and entertaining. And you would remember, you'd say, oh, the next day at work, you'd say, oh, do you hear what they said on Sports Center? Who is that? Oh, that was the Titian. It would always be the
yeah,
Titian that said it, right? So
yeah,
I'm saying
yeah.
you have to give him kudos. He was, and you could argue this, he is probably in the last 50 years that I can recall the best Sports Center, like the best highlights guy on any sports show that I can think of anywhere in the States and in Canada in terms of his person.
And it's a talent, right, to read highlights off a teleprompter and then sync it up with the video. It's not easy.
And then do it with enthusiasm and with funny things to say and be able
Right.
to deliver them with the timing. And yes, all of that. I 100% agree. Yeah.
So anyway, all the best to his family and those at TSN. He'll be remembered by me, and I'm sure by a bunch of other people as time goes on.
Yeah.
Just want to slide that in there. The Toronto Maple Leafs made the hiring of Craig Berube official on Friday with a news dump at 5 o'clock on Friday of the May long weekend. How nice of the Leafs. But they made the press conference this morning.
You don't have to read too much into it. It's not anything. It's just.
Oh, I know. But we're always told it's considered a Friday news dump 1 minute before the end of the news day. But really, is the end of the news day anytime soon these days? Anyway, but he had a press conference this morning at the Ford Performance Center in Toronto. I don't know about you, but it certainly sounds like there's going to be changes in Toronto, and they might be of the massive variety.
In what way? What are they hinting at?
Well, to me, Craig Berube plays his style of hockey, which is that tough, hard-nosed. I mean, we saw it in St. Louis, and I just don't think that the vast majority of that Leafs roster is going to play Craig Berube's style to push them over the finish line in the playoffs when it means the most. I also thought it was very interesting they were non-committal on the tour. If you listen to the Leafs press conference last week,
Yeah,
something has to give with Marner and Tavares eligible to sign extensions this year. I think the Leafs need to address their goaltending. I think they need to get better on defense. TJ Brody, Mark Giordano. It's time to move on. I like Benoit. They have to make decisions, I think, with Timothy Liljegren. To me, their biggest question mark is in goal. Ilya Samsonov didn't get it done when it counted, hasn't been able to get it done when it counts. Joseph Woll might be the goaltender of the franchise, but he's never healthy. Um,
Yeah.
so the to-do list for me in Toronto is very long to get to where they need to go. And
I
when you
would
look
agree.
at the division that they're in, I think that just encapsulates it as well.
I would agree. And I like we've talked about this before. Um, I think the only way you make a change significant enough to make a huge change on your team is to change your core. And I'm not talking all 5 or 6 guys. Yeah, and I agree. There's a comment here. Yeah, like a number of the Leafs' current roster, they're not fitting into his style of play, Berube, that he wants on the roster. Yeah, that's playing as a playoff team, and they got too many guys that are all like all during the regular season. There's lots of chance to pad your stats and da 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 da. But when you got to get hard, greasy goals and go to the net, do they have enough of those guys with talent? They got some, but not enough. And to me, to change this team, and I'm not telling the Leafs what to do because the Jets got to do the same thing. And I don't want like I'm going to give the Leafs help. I don't want to give the Leafs any help at all because I'm happy when they lose. But that being said, Riley, Tavares, Nylander, Marner, Matthews, those 5 guys, something has to change. You cannot go into next season with those 5 same guys in your lineup, in my opinion, because you're
I
not going to
I,
change the team.
I think this is moving on from Marner and Tavares. Because you're certainly not moving on from Austin Matthews, a generational player. And I don't think you're moving on from Nylander, who just signed a contract recently.
No, I agree. I don't think you get rid of Riley, and I don't think you get rid of Matthews. So then it has to be Nylander, Tavares, Marner, and I agree. I would think out of those guys, John Tavares, he knows how. He's a bigger guy. He knows how to play playoff hockey. I mean, he's older, but Matthews, he knows how to play that way. Riley, you need one good puck moving anchor on the power play defense guy. So you're not going to get rid of Riley. So who is it? It's going to be either Nylander or Marner. You just signed Nylander to the big deal, and I think that leaves Mitch Marner as the guy without the chair, playing musical chairs, and the music has stopped. And I think he's the one. And now people are going to say, how can you trade Mitch Marner? He's just, yeah, he is a great talent. But you know what you get for Mitch Marner if you package it up
A
right?
lot.
You maybe
A
put
lot.
you get a
A
lot.
lot of things.
You get a lot of things. And especially if you package him up with somebody else, you know what they need? They need another top defenseman. So maybe they get another, like a number 2 guy to play with Riley, somebody there young and tough and skates and moves guys in front of the net. And then with that, maybe you get another second line guy who can play hard minutes, goes to the net. He doesn't have to be a superstar, but the type of guy that when the playoffs come, he's going to be the guy in front of the net, banging in goals and getting goals off his skate and off his stick and off his shin pads, like
Yeah.
whatever those guys are that play for all these other teams that are now further down.
And Craig Berube, I think the big we saw Brad Treliving kind of start to build that this year with Matt Stolmy and Simon Benoit and those types of guys.
Yep.
And now he's got the coach to enforce the way he wants to play. So changes for Toronto coming for sure.
Yep.
We have 5 minutes left, so let's talk about the conference final.
No, wait. I just wanted to what's with the Jets? Is there any update on the Jets search?
Yeah, nothing yet. Maybe something later this week. Stay tuned.
But there's no rumor, there's no innuendo.
Nothing. It's all quiet.
No, the Jets they shut that down. Like, yeah, that's.
If it's not a Neil at this point, I'll be shocked. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you did your due diligence, so
yeah, you asked the questions, but like I said, I don't think the coach alone is the issue. Moving from Rick Bowness to Scott Arniel, I mean, Rick Bowness is a good coach. Paul Maurice is a good coach. Scott Arniel will be a good coach, a good head coach. What's the issue? It's the same issue in Toronto. Craig Berube is not going to get the Toronto Maple Leafs to win with that lineup. because they
Nope.
can't play the way that you need to play consistently during the regular season and especially in the playoffs in order to win consistently. So you got to put some other ingredients in the cupboard. I'm sorry. And that's in Toronto and that's in Winnipeg. And I know that's hard to hear, especially for people that get very in love, I guess, for lack of a better word, they fall in love with the players on their teams. Listen, I like all the Jets players. There's nobody there, and I'm sure they're all great guys. I'm not saying anything bad about anything. I heard some of them are great friends. They'll be friends forever, but they're not going to win with this team as constructed. And
For
that's
sure.
but anyway, okay. So let's go now. Round 3, conference final. Now, here's the thing. You have to do this favor for me. I am down 2 points. So I have to play my cards maybe a little bit differently than you in order to have a chance to catch up, right? I mean, so this is what I would do. This is what you would do for me, or no, sorry, this is what I would do for you normally if I was up.
No, you did the same last year, so
okay. So I would like you to pick first for each of the series, and then I will make my decision because that allows me then to potentially change the pick or make changes to give me a chance to catch you. Because if we pick exactly the same, there's no chance for me to catch you, right? So anyway, there we go. Okay. What are we going to talk first, East or West?
Rich, I have to run upstairs quickly. I will give you my 2 picks. You can talk about your picks then after I give mine. How does that work?
Are you going to come back to finish the show?
Yeah, I'm going to come back down to wrap up. Okay. I gotta run upstairs quickly. I'll give you my picks quickly. For the Dallas series, I'm picking the Dallas Stars to win in 6 over Edmonton. I just think there's too much up and down the lineup for Edmonton to have to worry about. I think their fourth line can far outmatch anything Edmonton can throw on the fourth line. I think the same with their third line. I think the same of their second line. Maybe not their first line if Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are on the same line or different. Bottom line, close games. I just think Dallas has that depth scoring that pushes them over the top.
Okay.
And for the second series, this is a clash of Titans. The Rangers looking to get back to their first Stanley Cup final in a significant amount of time. Interesting part about the Final Four here is that no team has won the Stanley Cup if ever more in the last 25 years. So somebody will win their first Stanley Cup or their first Stanley Cup in a really long time. In this series, I was
just going to say Florida's won. Florida's the only team that hasn't won before. Rangers, Stars,
Rangers won, yeah.
But the Florida Panthers have never won. They've been to the finals, but they've never won. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Edmonton didn't win since the 80s. Dallas hasn't won since the Medano, the tit in there.
It was late 90s.
Yeah. No, I just think this will be a clash of Titans. Super, super good series, but I'm pitting with my pit. I'm sticking with my pit to start the playoffs. I said it would be a Dallas and Florida Stanley Cup final. I'm sticking with it, and I think the New York Rangers take this thing back to MSG and punch their ticket to the Stanley Cup final in a Game 7 at the Garden. No,
So you're saying Florida and 7?
Sorry, no, I'm not.
You're confusing me. You said, Florida's my pick, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
and the Rangers are taking it back to glory to people.
Sorry, I'm so confused. I confused myself. Sorry, I am taking for some reason I thought Florida had home ice in this series. I'm picking Florida in 7 to win at the Garden.
Okay.
Sorry, that's on me. Florida in 7 to win at the Garden.
Now you're going upstairs?
Huh?
Why don't we just finish the show and then you can
go? Okay, yeah. Okay, sure.
Okay. I said all along I loved Florida. I loved Florida. I still love Florida. I think this is going to be a battle royal, and I like this series. It's going to be, yeah. I'm thinking it's going to be 6 or 7 games. But I'm going to pick the Rangers, number one, because I want to be completely different from you, and number two, because even though I really like Florida, I think the Rangers have shown me a little bit more. And I think the Florida is vulnerable, and they've shown a little bit of their vulnerability to a very weak scoring team in the Boston Bruins. The other thing that I really like about the Rangers, do you know that the Rangers right now in penalty killing is 0? They've only given up 4 power play goals since the playoffs started. And you know how many shorthanded goals they've scored? So they're even. They're even on killing penalties. That's unbelievable. So I like the Rangers because of their special teams and because I think they have a little bit more offensive jam. And I'm not sure.
Sorry to touch you off, Rich. I'm going to put a stat up for you to back the numbers. Rob has done the research.
Oh, yeah, I know. Well, I knew this. I knew the Rangers. Well, you didn't ask me. I would have told you. Oilers, I know 90. I could have told you off the top of my head. Rangers, 94. And I knew the Panthers, and I knew Dallas was late. I wasn't sure it was 98, 99. It was late 90s. So there you go. But anyway, thank you, Rob. Okay, so Rangers, what am I going to do here? What am I going to do? Rangers, 6 or 7, 6 or 7. Ay. You know what? I'm going to do 7. I want to see 7 games. Okay, so I'm doing Rangers in 7 games, and Dallas, Edmonton. I really like this series. I think I'm going to pick Dallas. Should I pick them in 5 or in 7 games? I want Dallas. I don't think Edmonton has a snowball's chance in Hades to beat the Stars in 7 games. But I don't know, can Dallas win in 5 games? Like, is that possible?
I said the Oilers would win in 5 in the last round.
Yeah, I know, but Dallas, can Edmonton actually? Like, I just think they're going to get exposed. I'm going to do Dallas in 5. So I got Dallas in 5. You have Dallas in 6. You have Florida in 7. I have Rangers in 7. There you go. That's a good show.
Okay, so we've done our pits.
Yeah.
What is, really quickly here, what is the heart pit away from what we just picked? Is it the same as what we just picked?
The heart pick?
Yeah, what would the heart pit be like? If I was cheering for somebody, who would
well, people say, oh, the Canadian team hasn't won and blah, 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 blah. Listen, that means nothing to me. It's not a Canadian team. Each team has as many Canadians on it as another team. So it doesn't mean you're just cheering for a uniform. You're not cheering for a Canadian.
You're cheering for the market.
Like, exactly. The Oilers, they got Germans, Americans, Canadians, Latvians, Russians, Finnish, Swedish, all of the above, just like every other team.
My heart Stanley Cup final would be Florida Edmonton.
Okay, well, you've picked they haven't picked the opposite, but okay, yeah. I just don't know how Edmonton beats Dallas in 7 games.
No, but I'm saying, like, if I had to pick with my heart instead of my head, I would pick Florida Edmonton.
I just think, I think it's gonna. I know. I think what's gonna happen with the Stars, even though Edmonton has a very good power play, but I think Dallas has a good penalty kill. I think it's going to be harder for Edmonton to get to the front of the net and do all their dilly-dally. Where I think Edmonton is going to be exposed is Dallas, when they play 5-on-5, is going to expose that team defensively. Especially CC and Nurse are going to get exposed. And I just don't think they have 6 defensemen that can play with the 4 lines that the Stars can throw at him line after line after line. I just think that they're not able to.
I mean, it's even simpler than that. I think the Oilers are to be exposed goaltending.
And goaltending, which is a proven goaltender in Ottinger versus who does Edmonton have? Who are they going to go with? I don't even know. They went with Skinner, then they go with Pickard for 2 games, and then when they come back game 6, they go back to Skinner.
I know. So that's why coaches need money. They have to make those decisions.
Make tough calls. Yep. Okay.
You had it down with the other guy, but Anyway, we'll be back next week, probably on Monday. I think on Monday we'll be back. Memorial Day in the States. Rich, people like the show. They give the thumb up the same time you do. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. The conference finals begin on Wednesday. Just a quick note, the Memorial Cup begins on Friday. So we'll have an update for you on that on Monday. For Rich Petty, Michael Justin, thank you so much for watching. Good night.